Hey guys, welcome back to Everything in Between. I'm here with my friend from the support group. Her name is Alyssa, and she's here to share her experiences and her story. And Alyssa, if you want to maybe tell me how anxiety for you got started, or your earliest memories of experiencing it.
So I think my earliest memories were when I was maybe 7. And my parents had split up, and I was always scared. But I think it was that whole not having my dad there. So then after, it kind of became just like me, my mom, and my sister. And for years, it was like that. I had my mom's dad and my mom's mother, who I was very close to. So we moved around for a little bit. And then my grandmother bought a house in like 1996. We moved in with her. And the same year, my grandfather passed away. And then it just became like this feeling of feeling alone. But it wasn't really like bad anxiety. It was just more of like everybody leaves. So I kind of got scared to be alone. And then years later, my grandmother ended up getting sick. She died, like we seen her die from cancer, and that was like traumatizing. So after that, I kind of became like a different person, and I never realized like how trauma can affect you so much. it became where I was rebellious, and I was just like constantly, it was, for me, I didn't know what it was, but it was just push everybody away, just stay clear of everybody, take care of yourself. And I was very overprotective of my mom and my sister. My mom, it kind of became a lot like on me because of the fact that I'm my mom's oldest. So I helped her raise my sister. So then later on, I ended up having my son. And I think that's when the anxiety, like when I knew I had anxiety. And that was because he was a special needs. I was 15 when I had him. He went through multiple surgeries. He died on me 3 times. I didn't know like what I was doing, but I was just doing it. And I didn't know that at that time, and for all these years, I always went through like just doing it and never dealing with the anxiety. And now at 34 years old, I'm dealing with the actual anxiety.
So what does your panic look like today? Like how often would you say you have a panic attack, or maybe some of your triggers?
So I think what really triggered me into acknowledging the fact that I have anxiety and even panic is COVID. We got hit with COVID in December. I was scared because my son is immunocompromised. I beat thyroid cancer 2 years ago. And we actually did very well with COVID. Everybody, I mean, there was no fevers. Everybody was fine. It was more of just like sniffles, allergies in a way. And I got through it. But afterwards, in January of this year, which was like 2 weeks after COVID, I stressed my body so much, I guess for all these years, that I got really sick. And I developed an ulcer. And I was throwing up for hours. It was January 28th. I couldn't even catch my breath. And we ended up calling an ambulance. I was severely dehydrated. And that's when they were like, it's anxiety, like you've made yourself sick. Ever since then, I've had like tingling headaches, tingling in my legs, my arms feel heavy. It's messed with my sinuses and allergies. So every time the pollen is high, and I live in Chicago, so our weather is bipolar. Um, every time our weather fluctuates and it's humid, I'm freaking out continuously thinking I have COVID. Um, I it became to where I used to like to take up until last year. I like to take long drives, go on road trips with just my kids. I was going to attempt it this week and I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, my trigger personally is just cars in general. I hate going anywhere. Like, I feel like I'm trapped, and like if I have a panic attack in the car, I can't leave because it's moving. So I definitely get not wanting to go on a trip. Um, I last year, so I'm agoraphobic. I haven't left my house in like 5 years, and if I do, my wife's usually like clenching my back as hard as she can, because if she's not, then I'm freaking out. But I managed to beat it last year, and we got to go up north. I live in the desert, Arizona, but we got to go up north into the forest, and it was really nice. But yeah, I definitely know what it's like to be afraid of long car rides. You also mentioned that your grandparents died, or you had to experience death pretty early, and the same thing happened to me. My grandpa died, and then my grandma died, and I remember holding like their hands afterwards. Like, I got to see the body. So just having that experience of death so early on, and then your son, you said he died on you 3 times, so just that constant, I don't know, awareness, presence of death in your life. And I got what is it called, a lymph node in my armpit,
Okay.
like 4 years ago, and I was convinced cancer. I thought I had breast cancer, like I'm a guy, whatever. But like, I was looking up all these things on Google, and I was convinced. Like, I was like, I probably have like 2 weeks to live. But ever since I've had anxiety, every little thing that like feels weird, it's just immediate, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
And yeah, you mentioned that like you went to the hospital, and you caused yourself to get sick just by thinking about it. And yeah, I've definitely done that myself. It's scary.
So my doctor explained to me, and again, like, obviously death is a trigger. Now COVID, I never realized these things, and because we don't acknowledge them, it plays on us for long term. And I don't think we realize that things from the past, even as we get older, it's not that they're haunting us in a bad way, but they are, because we've never really processed the emotions. I was always taught, just go with it, like, just get through it and then move on. And it's more like it was brushed under the rug rather than addressed. And in a way, I just feel like we don't always really recognize within ourselves, like, we have to take accountability for what we do to ourselves and how we harm ourselves. Like, yes, my anxiety was bad. Years ago, I had panic attacks. I had passed out one time. I was on the phone with my best friend, and it was just that I was crying so much because I had gotten overwhelmed. And I was like, okay, I'm going to cry it out, get over it, and I'll be fine. And I ended up passing out. I was home alone. I woke up to paramedics and police standing over me, because my best friend had called the ambulance while I passed out and didn't even know, like, didn't even realize it. And it's like, if you don't acknowledge these things, which is kind of why I started with like a lot of mindfulness and even journaling. And I know a lot of people don't believe in spirituality, but it's been a part of generations in my family, good and bad ways. But if we don't check our emotions and how would I say it? If we don't check our emotions and we don't directly handle the situations at hand, it's forever going to taunt us, and it's going to affect us in some way or another. And I feel like that is a huge thing with anxiety. Is anxiety can't kill you, but it makes you feel like you're dying.
Yeah.
And then it causes stress. And stress is a legitimate silent killer.
Yeah, you can think yourself to death for sure. Like
Right.
you think you're having a heart attack or whatever, but that panic attack, you keep having those and you're gonna get yourself sick for sure.
It's it becomes debilitating. Like you said, you haven't left the house. My mom did that for 2 years. She went through anxiety as well when her and my father split up. She didn't leave the house for 2 years. It was bad. And I remember like she would have like these mood swings and we'd be like, what the hell? Like I took the brunt of it because I just felt like that was my job as being the older sister for my sister. And you know, now that I'm older and I have kids, I sit here and I get mad at myself because I'm like, I know what this is. I know what's going on, but I'm letting it control me. And I don't think it's fair because, like I said, a majority of us do have kids and we don't realize like what it does to them. And for me, I want to change it and I want to help other people because I've always been a caregiver my whole life. So it's like I I feel good helping other people. I feel good knowing that other people aren't feeling horrible or I can make their day better with just a simple conversation.
Yeah, sometimes I go on the internet looking for people who like post randomly and don't have any friends. Like I'll search on Twitter like the last person who said, I just want anyone to talk to, or I just want to kill myself, or whatever. I really want to find people like that. Like I love helping people, or because there's a lot of people out there in our current situation who might not go very many places and don't really have a social life, and they don't have family. It's just all them, and it's sad. So I actually don't know too much about you at all, and I know that you know because I've probably mentioned it multiple times that I don't really go anywhere. So do you have are you able to go out? Do you have a job or
So
not?
I do have I do have 3 jobs.
Damn.
I do have 3 jobs. I do go out. Um, with my situation, it's kind of both. There's days where I don't want to leave the house, and then there's days where I'm like, I need to get out of the house. So it's kind of hit or miss. A majority of the time, I do feel better being distracted. I do kind of fight it out. I could be at work and I'll just feel like, oh my God, my body feels heavy. I have a headache. I feel lightheaded. My arms feel tense, or my shoulders or my back is hurting. And I'm just like, oh my God, like I want to go. I got to go. I got to go. But I know I'm at work and I can't just leave. So I've learned to kind of fight that. As far as like for like in your situation for like not being out, I I mean even taking a small step as going to a gas station and picking up a pack of gum. I did mention in the groups earlier and before how we should challenge each other. Small things, small accomplishments, you know, and help each other through it because sometimes that's what you need. You need somebody to push you. You need, and I feel like I didn't really have that until I started getting into the groups. I was always like, oh my God, I'm going to sit here on my bed by myself and I'm going to rock myself and cry and have a panic attack. And then nobody's going to know till they come in my room, or I'm going to pass out. And that's a big thing for a lot of people. I notice it's like, I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack, or I feel like I'm going to pass out. But what's really helped is like, it doesn't work for everybody. But there's meditation, there's incense, there's essential oils, there's things like Florida water, there's this magnesium oil, which is actually just a spray. You can buy it on Amazon, and it helps so much. Like, I've never really had anything help me. I'm not big on medications because I feel like they're just downers. Some people they work for, some people they don't. Um, but I'm also scared of medications because I don't like feeling out of control, even though anxiety makes you feel out of control. I just feel like it would make you worse. So I look for a lot of natural things. And even the foods that we eat, or like drinking water or staying hydrated, those things can really affect the way our body feels, and it triggers the anxiety.
I drink Coke all day and I eat candy all day, and I definitely feel it, and I'm like, I really need to drink water, but then I don't, and then I feel like shit. And so yeah, I definitely understand that one.
Yeah, and it's like, I went to a mindfulness clinic, and he was explaining how like you should drink half your weight in water and whatnot. And it's like, to me, I was just like, look, if I could get through 2 bottles of water a day, I'm feeling accomplished because it's more water than what I've had, or even like vitamin water. I'm a fan of the dragon fruit flavor. Amazing. I love it. If you want that sweetness. I had stopped drinking coffee for months because of the anxiety and after the ulcer and whatnot. And I tried it again recently. I ended up having a little bit of anxiety. I got a little shaky and tingly. So what I did was I started with frappes, mocha frappes. I talk about mocha frappes in one of my groups all the time. It's it's really good, but I know it's not the healthiest for you. But if you need that little sugar or caffeine, it definitely helps. And it actually does like kind of wonders for me because I'm hyper after. I'm happy, I'm giddy. So you just kind of got to pick your poison, but in a healthy way.
Yeah, the amount of Coke I drink, I always feel like literally sticky inside my body, and it does freak me out. You mentioned
See,
you were scared of taking meds, and so at 5 years old, I was diagnosed with like a whole bunch of different things, and up until 20, I was like put on a bunch of different meds, and some of them had side effects and whatever. But since 20, I'm 30 now. I haven't taken anything. I've been clean from like drugs or whatever. I haven't no drinking, no anything for 12 years. I'm actually terrified of anything making me feel different. So like the only thing I'll take is Tylenol if I'm desperate. So yeah, meds scare the shit out of me.
yeah, I totally agree. I just think your body becomes immune to them, especially like benzos and things like that, like narcotics. They're narcotics. And the doctors don't have the time to sit there with us and be like, okay, what's triggering you? What's wrong? Why did you feel this, and that? And it's kind of like, okay, here's a script. And then that kind of makes you feel worse. You feel more like shit. Like, well, you don't care about how I feel. Like, you don't care about what's going on. How do you know that that's all that's wrong with me? So you're only giving me one medication. Which is why, like I said, like I tried Lexapro years ago. I took it for 2 days and I hated it. In January, my doctor gave me hydroxyzine, which is like 0.25, and I literally cut it into fours. And even though they compare it to Benadryl, I still didn't like it. And I only took it because I was like so bad, and I was determined not to go to the hospital again after like my fifth trip. I was like, I don't want to go. Like, they made me feel like shit. They made me feel like I was crazy. And, you know, I even had like some family that was like, oh, if you keep letting it control you, they're going to put you away. And I was like, what the hell? And I kept thinking, like, how did this happen? Like, how did I go from controlling it and being so in tune and aligned within myself that I lost myself? And it happened. To me, it was like rock bottom. And I was just like, look, like, maybe I'm going to find groups. And that's how I found the anxiety groups. And I was like, oh my God, there's so many people who have so many similar symptoms as me. And we're all making it each day. Like, we can help each other fight it and get rid of all this. Not saying that it's going to completely go away, but just to cope with it better, or to manage like daily life better, because we're not living, like, we're just existing with
Right.
anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, it's invisible. You can't see it. There's no way to know that other people experience it. I definitely felt like alone until I found people, and I was amazed that people like have the exact same thoughts and symptoms as me. Like they notice their breathing, so they must be dying, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I do think with the doctor stuff, that they are very quick to throw meds at people, and yeah, some people definitely need them, but a lot of people don't. And I know that like coming off some of those meds makes
Is
you
worse.
really sick. Yeah, gets you really, really sick. You mentioned you had 3 jobs. I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing those 3 jobs, but that's amazing because
So I was up to 4 until today actually. So for 11 years I've been working at a warehouse. I do their billing. Most of the work is from home. Sometimes I go in. Um, so it's really easy and convenient with my other jobs. I do work at 2 different bars as well, which people are like, "You're so scared of COVID. How do you work at bars?" And I'm like, I don't know, just being around people. I manage. And there is days where I'm at work and I'm like, I'll hear somebody sneeze or cough and I'm like, oh shit, have you tested for COVID? And a lot of my customers, they kind of get a kick out of it, but they're like, it's okay, like we're okay. They kind of know. And they're regulars. So I do work at the 2 bars. I was doing the home care for 6 years. I've taken care of the same patient and her husband. Um, it was in home, it was private care, but it played a big part in a lot of my anxiety because I have been a caregiver for so long with my son. I took care of my aunt, I took care of my uncle, I've taken care of other family members when they were sick, and they've all passed away as well. Um, so I finally made the decision to let go of that job. And I really didn't share that with anybody until now. But it was something that was a long time coming. The family was, they have 2 children. The daughter was a very difficult person to get along with. She had no children, and I'm part Hispanic. So Hispanic people, and a lot of other people as well, not just Hispanics, but a lot of people do believe in taking care of their own elders and their own family when they're sick or something's wrong. Um, and I witnessed how selfish the children were. They wouldn't help. Um, there's 3 of us caregivers. We've sat at the hospital with the patient numerous times, and the kids would be like, oh, just text us, or oh, just call an ambulance. And it just became too much emotionally for me. Um, because I become emotionally invested. So I would get really defensive and I'd kind of go off on them. And today was just the last straw. And I was like, you know what? I can't do it anymore. Um, it just became about me. I'm focusing on me now. And I need to do what's right for me. And this job is draining. It was mentally draining. So I did give it up. So now I am down to the 3. And I'm okay with those. I mean, I could work my warehouse job, and my boss is amazing. I love him to death. He's very understanding. When I had surgery, when I had the cancer, for the couple months, I had gotten really sick. I had lost a lot of weight. Um, and then I had surgery. I was out of work for 2 weeks. So they were awesome. My 2 bar jobs, I just started those in January and February. And they've been really understanding as well. And they're really flexible with me. They're understanding, like I said, even though my kids are older, my son is 19. He just turned 19 on Friday. My daughter's 15. But my kids are a very big part of my life, and I have to be very accessible for them. So with the jobs that I do have, they are very open, and that helps me a lot and gives me a lot of comfort in knowing that I have those options.
Is the cancer completely gone? Is that over and done with, or what's going on with? I don't know. I don't know if you said exactly when that happened.
So in 2019, in October, right before COVID started or became out there, in October, I had gotten really sick with I thought I had the flu. Um, and then I couldn't get rid of the cough. And in December, I took my kids, this was the middle end of October. So I was like, what the hell? And then after 3 days, I was kind of okay, but I still had the cough. And December, the day after Christmas, I took my kids to their end of the year checkup. And we've had the same doctor for 18 years. It's been my son's doctor since he was a month old. And she looked at me and she said, Alyssa, you look really pale. And I said, yeah, I got this cough. I can't get rid of it. I don't know what's going on. I was losing a lot of weight. She's like, I think there's something wrong with your thyroid. And I was like, no way. Like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I really just kind of brushed everything off. And she said, I want you to come in and do a blood draw. And I was always like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll come, and I'll never show up. So she scheduled me for January 1st. And I was like, really? The day, New Year's? Like, I want to drink. I want to have fun. And she was like, you better be here. So it was just one of those things I knew that I had to go. Um, so what I did was I ended up going for the blood draw, and I had to do the blood draw before I went into the appointment with her so she could get the labs like within an hour. And I went in, I was sitting there, she came in, she said hello, and she started typing right away, and I was like, well, hello to you too. Like she just wasn't as talkative as she normally would be. And she said, okay. She said, Monday morning, this was a Friday. She said, Monday morning, you're going in to the endocrinologist. And I was like, the endocrinologist? What the fuck? So she was like, you're going to the endocrinologist. Your thyroid level is bad. And I was like, okay, like what's bad? It was undetectable. My thyroid stimulating hormone level was 0.002. And its normal range is supposed to be like 1.5 or more, or whatever. So I was like, okay. So I go and I'm like, well, what does that mean? She's like, you could just probably need some medicine, whatever. And I knew just by her demeanor, it wasn't normal. And I was like, what do you mean I'm just going to need medicine? Like, there's something else wrong. Because then I started researching my charts. Well, I have my chart, and it shows you your labs. So I started looking at my labs. Now, mind you, when I was 18 years old, I was in the healthcare. I worked in the medical field basically my whole life. Aside from having my son at 15, I was a paramedic. I worked in an emergency room for a couple of years. It was like I kind of know a little bit. So I seen that my white blood count was extremely high and my red blood count was really low. So I was like, there's something not right. I automatically knew like cancer. And it wasn't just like, oh, you're thinking it. I felt it. I knew it. And I went to my appointment. He said he did an ultrasound that day. He called me that evening. He did an ultrasound on my throat, called me that evening and said, Wednesday, you're going for a biopsy. And I was like, what? Like, this is 3 days span. And I'm just like, you are moving too quick. Like, there's something wrong. Like, you're not telling me everything. So he called. I went for the ultrasound. This was in the afternoon, 6 p.m. that night. I was at work. He called me. And I'm like, that's weird for the doctor to call you at 6 o'clock at night. So he said, there's 24 nodules in your throat. And they're all confined to your thyroid, which is why you've lost so much weight and you feel like you can't breathe. And I was like, what? He's like, yes, there's 24 nodules in your throat. So I said, okay. I said, well, what does that mean? Is it cancer? He said, well, that's why you're going for the biopsy. He goes, but usually more nodules mean not cancer. And I was just like, bullshit. Like, you're just trying to keep me calm. And I went for the biopsy on Wednesday. Friday morning, I got the phone call. And
you all right?
I remember I screamed. I screamed so loud, and my sister came in my room and she's like, they called you. And I was like, yeah. I had worked that evening until 6 in the morning, and he called at 9:30 in the morning. And he's like, it's cancer. You have 21 of the 24 nodules. And I said, so what does that mean? Because I automatically thought, okay, well, like, I'm going to die, you know? And he said, we're going to have to remove your whole thyroid. So I ended up by that was on Friday. Tuesday afternoon, I ended up in the surgeon's office, and I'm thinking, okay, you know, usually surgery they give you about a month, 2 months. No, this was January 6th, and that I found out, and then so on the 10th of January, she said, the latest I'll do it is February 14th. And I said, well, I can't do February 14th because that's the day my grandmother died. And she had cancer, but she had uterine cancer. And so she said, well, February 6th is the day that I'm looking at. And I said, okay. So in less than a month, I found out I had cancer and I had it taken out. February 6th of 2020, my best friend, my mom, and my sister were there with me, and my kids. 2 of my aunts and my cousins showed up. And I remember for that whole month when I was fighting everything out, I didn't want anybody to know. I didn't tell friends. I didn't tell certain family members. I didn't tell anybody. I just felt like I needed to go through it alone. And I pretty much did with just the people that I had with me. My sister and my best friend were my biggest supporters. My best friend actually slept in the hospital chair. And I was in surgery for 6 hours. And I kept telling everybody, trying to make light of the situation. I was like, I'm going to have a scar on my neck. I'm getting a tattoo over it as soon as I heal. You know, I don't want to walk around with a scar. And the doctors kind of laughed. I freaked out. But they took it out. And like I said, I was in there for almost 6 hours. She said she had gotten everything and that I would be on a medication for the rest of my life. So I'm on levothyroxine, which is Synthroid. And luckily, they've only had to change my medication, adjust it, twice in the past 2 years. I just went on, we're in, June now? I went May 1st, or the first week of May. I went to my endocrinologist. I did some of my labs. And so far, everything is good. So I am cancer-free. As of now, I pray that I continue to stay that way. But that was a very harsh thing. And I feel like it was meant to happen at that time because a month later, we got hit with COVID. So it was really scary. When COVID first started, I was like a freak. I was like the boy in the plastic bubble. We weren't going anywhere unless we had to. We were spraying everything with Lysol as soon as we got in the car, including ourselves. I didn't let my kids leave. You know, I became very paranoid. But yeah, that was a lot. And I feel like a lot of people go through these things, whether it's with themselves or with their families, and it affects us so much for so long that it becomes, to me, in my head, I'm thinking like, where do we catch a break? Like, when do we have somebody to help us or understand it where we get that break? You know, it's just like, is there ever a breaking point? And I know that there is, but it also falls on us to take those steps.
I mean, I think you're a superhero. You literally went through my worst fear, because every time I feel anything weird, I'm just like, yep, I got cancer, I'm dead, I'm probably going to die, I should just lay here and do nothing until I'm dead. But you got the call, had to know that you had cancer, had to know they were going to cut your throat, aware of all of this, and made it through. That's like, I don't know, like I said, you faced my worst fear, and I think that's amazing, to be honest. Like, obviously that's horrible, but the fact that you made it through, that's...
Thanks.
You cheated death, you know?
I really appreciate that. And that's the thing, like, I just feel like everybody goes through something. We all either go through similar situations, some worse than others, or it's it, it's somebody related to us. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean us, but we know somebody, and we all need some type of support somehow, whether it's through a stranger or through family. And a lot of times I notice, like, even in the groups, a lot of us don't have family support or even spousal support. Um, I don't have a spouse, so I don't have that issue. I fall back on my kids a lot, and they don't even realize, like, they're the reason why I'm constantly telling myself, like, I'm gonna beat anxiety one way or another. I did it before, I can do it again. Like, I've always been in this fight or flight mode. And it's more of like I've always been in flight mode because I'm constantly just go, 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 get through it and forget about it. But I never really forget about it, you know, and I think that's a lot of us who do that to ourselves. There's so many of us who do. I mean, there's so much trauma in all of us, abuse, physically, mentally, verbally. You know, people are like, oh, abuse is just somebody like physically. Like, no, it's not. It's in many forms, even through the internet bullying, cyberbullying, you know, things like that. A spouse being in jail, or like, you know, my kid's father, relationships, children, breakups. Like, those are all triggers, and people are passive about it, but it's a trigger and it needs to be addressed sometimes. Like, with me, like, my dad was always in and out of jail. I always took care of him. You know, now we have a good relationship, but I was always there for him. Like, I feel like I was his caregiver as well. You know, my mom and I, we didn't have a good relationship till now that I'm older. You know, my grandparents were my parents to me. And it's not discrediting my parents, but that's where I felt like I had all of that emotional love and support. You know, it's overwhelming. And if you don't speak about it, or you don't open up to somebody, or you don't find somebody to understand it, I just feel like we're going to continue to suffer.
Yeah, you mentioned in people in the groups, significant others, or just people in general, can't understand. And I think that's true. I think unless you've experienced it yourself, you'll never be able to understand it. Because, like,
Right.
Earlier I wrote this down. So another one of my biggest fears is passing out. You know, because we're always like, oh, I'm breathing, you know, I can't breathe, my heart's going, I'm about to pass out. I've never actually passed out before, and I'm just curious if you remember, like, what you remember of passing out. I'd be curious to hear what it even feels like.
So, it was a phone call that I have gotten about my kid's dad, and it triggered me. I don't know. It really wasn't that bad, but to me, it was like horrible. Um, and it triggered me so bad. I was crying, and I was like, okay, like, I'm just gonna call my best friend, and we're gonna talk about it, and I'm gonna cry about it, and then I'm gonna get over it and go on about my day. And I was crying so much, and I just kept saying, like, I don't know how long I have to deal with this. I don't know how long this is gonna hurt. Um, I was like self-pitying myself, I feel like, because it was like, why do I have to go through this? But there's a million people who go through it. But in that moment, it was like, why do I have to feel this? Why do I have to go through this? Like, when does it end? When am I going to catch a break? You know, it just hurts so bad. And, you know, I'm going to be alone forever. And it's, you know, always going to be just me and my kids. And nobody's ever going to understand me. Nobody's, you know, ever going to want me because of the anxiety or the fear, or like just how strong-willed I can be at times. And I was just crying so much, and I was just venting, and I was screaming and like yelling. And I just remember I was breathing so heavily that my body had gotten so hot, and I couldn't stop. And I kept hearing her say, like, breathe, take a deep breath, take a deep breath. And I was just like, I can't, like, I can't do this, I can't. And I just kept crying. And I was just crying so much that I created like this heat in my body. And her voice started getting like further and further. And I just felt so much pressure in my head. And I was laying halfway on the bed and halfway with my feet off of the bed. And I was just like, I can't, I can't. And I was gasping, and I started just with the breathing of the hyperventilating only, and I couldn't even talk anymore. And then I couldn't control the hyperventilating. And like I said, like, this pressure was just crazy, and her voice got further, and my body just got hotter. And that's all I remember.
Jeez.
And I know I was home alone. My mom was at work, my kids were at school. Um, it was early mid afternoon, and the door was locked. I had a small dog at the time. It was a Shih Tzu poodle. I remember I love that dog. Um, his name was Gizmo, and when I woke up, I had a oxygen mask on my face. I had the blood pressure cuff on me, the pulse ox, and they were taking my blood pressure. And he kept saying, like, her color's coming back, her color's coming back. And I was like, what? And he's like, my oxygen level started going up. So I was like holding my breath unintentionally, knowing that I caused myself to pass out, hyperventilating. And he said, her color's coming back, her color's coming back. Like, we could move her. And I went to jump up, and I was real dizzy. And he was like, don't move fast, don't move fast. And I said, what happened? Like, how did you just get in my house? And he's like, your dog? He said, you better get him some treats because he's really smart. And I was like, what? And I'm like, how was the door open? Like, I couldn't understand. Like, that was my first thought. How was my door open? And he's like, I don't know. He goes, but it was the cop who was the first one to get here. Um, he said that he can hear me going like gasping from downstairs. And that he kind of followed the noise, and that my dog kept running to him. And my dog didn't like attack him or anything, but he just kept running to him, bouncing around, and then running towards the stairs and looking up the stairs. And so he ended up listening. He could hear, the house was obviously quiet. Um, he could hear the breathing. He followed it, went upstairs, and that's how he found me. And I was just like amazed about all of it. But yeah, it was pretty scary. And that was years ago. And after that, I was like, I'll never do that to myself again. And I didn't. I did really good. I did really good at controlling it. I actually did meditation, hypnosis. I'm into, like I said, spirituality. So I did a lot of like cleansing, self herb baths. I actually make them. I even got into aromatherapy candles. I make those as well. Um, and I started using that, and I was doing really good. But once this COVID hit, I feel like that was a deal breaker. It was like, man, you beat cancer. You know, your son's beat all of these issues that he's had medically. You know, he's a miracle baby. You know, your daughter is healthy. Like, she's good. She's going to school. I have her in modeling. Like, she got recruited for parts in TV shows, and like Nike for a commercial event. Like, I think it's in September or something. Um, they want to start like filming for it and whatnot. And there's like so much good going on, but it's like I couldn't grasp that because I let the one thing COVID did to me affect me. And now, like, lately, more so recently, I've just been telling everybody, even in the group, like, dude, we have to change this. Like, we have to change it. Like, this isn't who we are. It doesn't define us. Like, yeah, we have anxiety, but it doesn't define who we are as a person. You know, and a lot of people, like you said, they don't understand that unless they go through it.
God, you've just mentioned so many miracles in a row. Like your kid, you going through cancer, you're passing out, and your dog's saving your life. Like, this is
Right.
insane. um,
And it's just like a lot, but there's so many people, again, like who have experienced these things or similarities or even just the physical symptoms of it that like don't get to speak on it. And I feel like that should be shared so that there can be maybe one or two people who do listen to these things and realizes like, man, we should show some type of compassion or concern. Like people classify it as mental health. And for me, I don't look at it as mental health. Like I look at it as, yes, it is debilitating. Um, yeah, it is psychological, but I don't think like we're crazy. I don't think that we belong in an institution. I think a majority of us just need like understanding and compassion. And that's very rare to find anywhere in this world nowadays.
yeah, because, if people have never felt it before, then they're just like, stop being a pussy, just grow up. But it's hard. Like, you've faced death. It sounds like a few times, and like that's my main trigger is I always think I'm gonna die. I know people have social anxiety. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of anxiety, but like I'm afraid of death in particular. Um,
And
but
that's an inevitable fear.
yeah,
It's just a
I
matter
know.
of coming to terms with it. Like I've experienced it so much in life with people and within myself and within my child that yes, I'm very scared of it. It does raise some anxiety, but at the same time it's like it's inevitable. We can't control it. Why am I going to let it control my mind now? We have to try to live in the moment, and appreciate like what we do have while we're here and during this time. And yeah, I get really emotional. I got a little choked up when I talked about the cancer, but it's to help somebody, not because like, oh, if I could do it, you could do it. But if I could do it with what I've went through, you can do it as well, and I'm sure people have gone through worse situations, like I said, but there's a breaking point somewhere.
I'm still just amazed at the amount of things that you've had to experience. Um, you mentioned, well, with all these miracles, I think you mentioned that you weren't necessarily religious, but you're more spiritual. Now,
Mhm.
I actually have no idea what that means, so I don't know if you could enlighten me
So
with that.
I was raised Catholic. I do believe in God. Um, I know some people do, some people don't, but there's different types of spirituality. This I do believe in like moon phases. I do believe in like full moons, lunar calendars, the old farmer's almanac. I believe in like incenses, sage. I mean, I'm a fan of crystals. I'm not very big on them. I do like shamanism. I follow that a lot, as well as there's like a religion called Santeria, which is like the seven African powers. Some people get scared by that because it can be used for good and bad. I would obviously never do anything bad to people or, use anything for anything bad. Um, but I follow what they symbolize. And a lot of them are characterized with a lot of Catholic saints. The seven African powers, which is the Santeria form that I use. Um, and it's can be used for a lot of healing. It's just a matter of your beliefs. I do use them for those purposes, healing and protection. Energy is a very big thing for me. So when I talk about spirituality, that's kind of what I talk about. Like the sound bowls, the Buddhism, the seven African powers, meditation. I did try hypnosis, and I think that did work for me as well. I do like nature, and I feel like being outside can be a huge form of grounding for people, and we don't realize it. And if you follow, or if some people do follow, like moon phases or retrogrades, things like that, um, you'll notice when the planets are aligned in certain ways or retrograding or shadowing, the effects that it can have on certain people, like astrologically. So that's more so what I'm on as far as spirituality.
Seems like you have an army of helpful um, things, you know? Um, so currently, I think you mentioned a panic attack that you've had, but how often would you say that you have panic attacks, or are they pretty rare and it's mostly like pre-panic or just, anxiety?
So there is the difference, I feel like, between panic and anxiety.
Right.
I feel like panic is more sporadic and it can go away quicker, but it does have a lot of physical feelings more so. Um, but it's quick. Anxiety is more long lasting and a lot of things can trigger it. There's a lot of similarities. As far as panic attacks, I don't, I think I did have one maybe on Monday night, because I was supposed to go on a trip on Tuesday. For whatever the reasons are, it got canceled. Um, I guess things happen for a reason and work miraculously. But um, so panic, I don't think it's, I think maybe in January that did trigger a panic attack. And after that, it kind of just left the anxiety lingering. So it's more so of an anxiety, where it's the constant fear. Or, okay, if you go outside, are you going to get into a car accident? Or, I live in Chicago. So there's so many shootings every day, all day, in different areas. Um, so it's like, if I go into the city, can I go enjoy being downtown with my kids by the lakefront? Or do we have to worry about a shooting? We were driving on the highway and I have an app. It's a citizens app. So it kind of alerts us when things are going on in the areas. Um, and I kind of freaked out because we were about a mile away, less than a mile away from a shooting that occurred on the highway. And I was like, I had my kids with me. It was during the day, but these people just don't care. So that triggered some anxiety, which is why sometimes it's like, oh, I don't want to go outside. It's dangerous out there. But then it's like, if I sit here, I'm just going to drive myself crazy. So it is anxiety, more so. And it happens for the past couple of days. I think I've been doing pretty good, because I've been controlling it a bit better.
When you feel like I think of anxiety as like just like pre-panic attack, and yeah, I do think that anxiety can last forever, and a panic attack usually you're freaking out, your heart's going, you can't breathe, and it usually lasts like 20 seconds for me, and then I calm down. But it's so traumatizing that the anxiety lingers after for a long time. Is there anything you do, like a go-to that helps you, like when you're starting to feel a panic attack coming up, that you maybe start to focus on something else? Or is there any like helpful hints in that department, like your go-tos?
Yes. So at one point it was really bad where I carried a pulse ox around with me.
Oh God. I would...
I did. I carried a pulse ox around with me and a thermometer, because I was worried, like, because of the whole COVID thing, or just I was worried if I was going to get a panic attack. I wanted to check my oxygen levels, my heart rate. I even bought an Apple Watch to monitor my heart. So I got rid of that.
Yeah.
But now I use the watch and I'm like, oh, I took all these steps. Cool. I'm going to lose more weight, So I kind of deterred it from there as far as the Apple Watch goes. But, and I got rid of the pulse ox and the thermometer to join.
Yeah.
So I'm doing good with that. I really do. I personally use meditation. It's actually a chant, and it's on YouTube. It's Gum Ganapatai, and that helps me a lot. It's just because you get in the rhythm of repeating it, so it kind of steers your brain somewhere else. Or I will put on like some high energy bass having music. I listen to all types of different music. If I'm home, I'll use an incense. And I do still carry around the magnesium oil spray because it does calm me down a lot.
So, like, I imagine if you were at work or in the car, you might not be able to sit down and watch that YouTube video. You would spray that spray, and that would help?
I do spray the spray. Um, or I will put the music on my radio, even at work. If I'm working at the bars, I usually just change the music to what I want. So I'll.
All right, can you hear me?
Okay, got it.
Okay. So when it cut out, you were just saying that you were able to change the music at the bar.
Yeah. So I'm either using music or ice water. Ice and water are my two best friends right now. Ice, for some reason, whether I hold it in my hand, I chew it, it calms me down a lot.
Yeah, my therapist mentioned ice. She also mentioned, try to look for 5 different things, smell different things, count to 10. She used to have me squeeze my arms as hard as I could and try to focus on that. I think it's all the same thing. I think it's whatever
Right.
you can to not think about, like, your breathing and your heart and your panic, because you thinking about it is psyching yourself out. And if you can distract yourself, well, then you're good now. Unless, there's actually something wrong with you. But, people like me, at least, everything that is wrong with me is 99% of the time my doing with my thoughts.
Right.
Um,
Sometimes we're our own worst enemy.
oh yeah. Yeah, you could definitely think yourself to death. Like you said, you got yourself sick.
Yeah.
So, so you mentioned way back towards the beginning that your boss was understanding. Has there ever been a situation where you're panicking at work and you guys maybe have like a deal, like, hey, just so you're aware, I do have anxiety, and maybe I can step away or whatever, something like that?
Yeah, actually, so they put a little fan for me in the office. And again, like with my one job, they let me work from home a lot. So it is more convenient, a little more comfortable for me. Um, I kind of like to go in just to challenge myself, just to stay there. I don't really get triggered there as much. I have twice in 11 years of being there. And that was just more so recently because of the whole issue in January when I made myself sick. My stomach was hurting so bad. You know, I was freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I have like pancreatic cancer, lung cancer, something. I do smoke cigarettes. So, he was like, go smoke a cigarette. And, one of the guys, he like talks with me through it and kind of changes like my whole perspective. He distracts me a lot. So I do have people there that do help distract me, and that usually helps. When it got really bad, um, it wasn't really bad, but the second time was not too long ago, before I joined the groups. Um, and this is one of the times I didn't want to just go run to the hospital. I went to go smoke a cigarette. I was shaky. I felt really tingly. I started getting really dizzy and like my vision was blurred, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to pass out." And they were like, "Let's go outside," because it was cooler outside. So I went outside. I was breathing air, and what really had triggered me was because my allergies and sinuses started messing with me. And I felt stuffy. And I felt like there was like mucus stuck in my head, and I couldn't like get it down my throat to spit it out or sneeze or blow my nose, and it triggered me. Um so more so recently that has been my only trigger. But I went and I ended up going outside, getting fresh air, and then I started chewing ice. They gave me a cold rag. I put it on me, and I somehow was able to like blow my nose and spit afterwards. But in that moment, I was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, I got COVID again. And the numbers are going back up. And oh my God, like my body's starting to get hot. My body feels heavy. I can't breathe. I can't smell. And my doctor, I ended up seeing her afterwards through a video visit. And she was like, what kind of helped me was she said, I understand why you think that way. And I was like, what? And that was like the first time I've heard her say that. Because usually she's understanding, but she'll be like, you know what? Like, you control the anxiety. Anxiety doesn't control you. It's mind over matter. You matter and you don't mind the anxiety, you know? And I was always like, yeah, 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 easier for you to say. But when I told her about like how this is triggering me, with my allergies and sinuses, which actually I go tomorrow morning to see an ENT because of it. But she said people who have had COVID are actually having long-term effects. 6 months to even year, like people that had the first round of COVID still actually have problems. And it triggers anxiety for them. And it's not that there's going to be long-term effects. We don't really know. But they still get some type of symptoms and it does freak them out. And that kind of scared me and I was like, well, what the fuck? But then she said, there's a doctor who has sinus issues as well after having COVID, and it triggers their anxiety. And for some reason that clicked in my head, like if a doctor couldn't go through it and be okay and be able to go to work and function, then like I can do it, And I just keep telling myself now, like, dude, you have really bad sinuses and allergies. It's just a long-term effect from COVID. Everybody has it worse this year for some reason. It's gotten the best of everybody, especially if you go outside a lot. So that's been how I deal with that, and that's how I deal with it at work. At the bar, I have one of my managers who she comes and closes out with me, and she's so supportive. She worked in a clinic that treated a lot of anxiety and other diseases for people. So she's very understanding. She'll be like, get your ice water, drink your ice, or just breathe. Are you okay? And she's very like comforting and calming, and her demeanor and just the fact that she knows, and she'll be like, what's going on. Like, that it's not going to happen. That you're not going to die. That it's just trying to prey on you, and she helps a lot. So in that sense, I feel like maybe I do have a little bit more of a benefit than some people as far as certain support, but it's kind of not from where or who I need it from, know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it does sound like with all these miracles that have happened and some of the people around your work and the doctor, and there's a lot of support. And I went to this therapy support group once, and the woman there who's leading it just like robotically read from a pamphlet, and I hated it. I hate when people don't connect with you at a human level and an understanding level. It really doesn't help at all unless you at least know what you're talking about, or can do it in a comforting, caring way. I don't know.
Right. And that's where like I feel like the compassion comes in for people.
Yeah.
Like, people don't have compassion, and some people do have it, some people just don't have it. You either do or you don't. But I feel like with anxiety, we do kind of need a little TLC, and I know it may sound like it's dramatic or a lot to some people, but again, if you've never gone through it, you're not going to understand. You don't get how it feels to, have to sit there some days, and like with you, with being at home and you have your wife, but maybe she doesn't completely understand, and it's like, If you go outside, she's like, oh, I got to take care of you. You know, not saying that that's how she is, but in our heads, that might be like how we're thinking she feels, or how our other significant other feels, or, you know, whatever the case is. You know, when they tell you just calm down, I hear it so many times how people are like, you know, oh, they told me just calm down. It'll be okay. I'll get over it. Like, you don't just get over it though. You're just masking it. You're just making it worse by telling me it's all in my head. I just feel like it's just kind of ignorant to me, because it's like, you don't understand. You're not being compassionate. That's not being compassionate or understanding. That's just telling me that I'm crazy and to get over it. If I knew how to get over it, I would have done that on my own a long time ago.
Yeah, there's certain people in my life that I feel like I have to hide it from, that I'm embarrassed of, and that if I ever brought it up, that they would even trigger a panic attack and make me feel worse. And I get really anxious around those people because I know I'm prone to panic attacks, but I also know I can't have one in front of them. But I definitely feel more comfortable when I'm allowed to, like, be perfectly open and honest. Like, hey guys, I may have a panic attack, or I'm feeling a little anxious, and that they respond to that understanding. But yeah, if you encounter someone who just doesn't get it and they're like, yeah, get over it, that just throws, at least for me, that will cause a panic attack. So
right, exactly. And I've experienced that. Like, my sister is very understanding. My mom, she suffered from it as well. Like I said, she didn't go out for 2 years, or maybe around that time frame, whatever it was for a long time. And she didn't go out, and it's like, you went through this, you know. And she's like, I got through it, you can control it. And we actually got into an argument, and it triggered me even worse, because it was like, you've been through this and you're not, like, seeing that, like, I really need help. Like, it's why I don't want to go somewhere, or like why I'm not doing certain things, or why I can't always be this, not like like happy-go-lucky person, you know. And that all stems back to, like, you know, where I touch base with my spirituality, my meditation, you know, even my essential oils, or even my magnesium oil, or ice, and journaling and writing it down and burning it, and the incense and the smell of certain incense, like, just calms me down so much, and it helps. Or the baths that I've created, you know, I'll go take a shower, and then I'll use, like, the things that I create, and I'll shower myself with it, or I'll cleanse myself with it, and I'm like, oh, I feel so much better. Like, okay, I could get through this. But it's like, I'm doing it alone, you know?
yeah, you mentioned that
I just need you.
Sorry, you might be glitching right now.
Uh-oh. I got you.
You hear me good?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. If you were saying something, just, like, start from the beginning of that sentence, because you might have cut out there.
Uh-oh. I think it is glitching. Okay. So it was just more so of, like, the feeling alone, going through the anxiety. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, perfect. Much better.
Nice. Okay. So you were saying something. Do you remember what you were saying about being alone?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was just a matter of, like, the suckiest part of it is being alone, going through anxiety.
You're still with me, right?
Yep.
Okay, just making sure. Yeah, I had wrote down what I was gonna say, and you said your mom had beat her anxiety, and when I beat mine, because I did beat mine for a time, I was so confident, and, you know, when I would start to feel a little bit anxious, I would just, like, be able to do my meditation or outthink it or whatever, and I kind of thought it was nothing too. So I could see how someone who's experienced anxiety, like, really bad, and then beaten it, to just be like, yeah, you can get over it, which is definitely not the right way to handle it. But, you know, it's kind of like bad for you but good for her, if that makes sense. Like, I'm
Right.
happy that she can, you know, think of her anxiety as a small thing now, because when you do think of it as this massive thing, then it can consume you. So it's a double-edged sword there.
Yes.
So another thing you mentioned, that you, well, first of all, my triggers is just like heat, being alone, because like you mentioned that you passed out alone. That's like my worst fear. So yeah, heat, being alone, and being in a car, because if I'm in a car and I have a panic attack, I can't leave. And it's also hot in Arizona, so usually I'm in a hot metal car trapped,
Oh, I,
moving, if that makes sense.
oh yeah, it
Um,
makes sense.
so your I don't know if this is your one and only, but your trigger is having a stuffy nose and it being hard to breathe. I remember I got sick a few weeks ago, and I had a stuffy nose. I never get sick, so I was like, shit, I can't breathe out my nose. And when I went to bed, I was like, am I gonna stop breathing? Because usually I'm like, you know, just laying there trying to breathe out my nose. But I found just like holding my mouth open, which sucked, like while
Yeah,
falling asleep, was the only way I could sleep, and that sucks.
it does. It does. Yeah, I've experienced that a couple times. Like, it's hard to explain like what my exact triggers are now because I've become an overthinker so bad that, the car rides definitely do get to me periodically. Um, in January and February, I'm also part of like a car club, and we go for rides with our club. And I was with them driving, and I had my kids with me, and I try to fight that part as much as I can, just because I don't want my kids to, I don't want it to affect them more than I feel like it already has. um, so I remember we were driving down in Chicago. We have Lakeshore Drive, so that's like our little cruise strip or whatever. And ended up pulling over. We pulled into a gas station. Usually, like that's what we do. And I started just feeling this like overwhelming heaviness, and I started getting like shaky and anxious, and it was just like for some reason I just felt like I have to go. I have to leave. And my daughter like looked at me and she's like, "Mom, what's wrong?" And I was like, "We got to go. I want to go home. Like I'm freaking out. I'm having anxiety." And it sucks because I feel like I'm taking away from them, things that they enjoy, or being able to do things with them. And that's like a big part of why I was like, I need to control this. Like, I need to figure this out, and I need to check myself, and I need to check my own emotions, and I need to process things and let things go and get over things from the past, because I'm hurting myself. But not only am I hurting myself, like I'm hurting them. And they may not realize it or treat me like if I am, but I noticed in their faces like there was a little bit of a scaredness to them. And I didn't like that. I did not like that. And that's when I was like really adamant about the groups and, finding ways of coping and doing things and exercises. And I got even more into the mindfulness because it was like, I'm not just hurting myself anymore, and it's just not fair to the people around me. And in a way, it's like I don't care about the people around me, but my kids, I do care about them, and I do care about what they feel. And I don't want them to feel like it's such a danger out there. Yeah, I want them to be aware, but I don't want them to experience this.
So I've probably mentioned this a million times, but I'm agoraphobic, and I don't know how to say that that's like 100% true, because I do go places sometimes, but I'm usually in the fetal position with my headphones on, and my wife is squeezing my back as hard as she can so I can focus on that instead of the fact that I'm in the car. But when this first happened to me, I cried when we left. We drove to California. I live in Arizona. It's like a 6-hour drive. But we went to Universal Studios, and Like, I literally cried getting in the car, and we drove straight to the beach. And when we got there, it was kind of like at the beach from the sand to the water. It's a pretty long walk, and I could not make the walk. I didn't even want to look at the ocean. It kind of freaked me out being on the edge of the earth, and just also being outside and exposed, so used to being inside, that I felt like I ruined that trip with my wife and my family. My sister ended up walking my wife over to the beach because she had never, been to the beach before, and I just like sat in the parking lot basically. And when we went to Universal Studios, I ended up leaving early, and I definitely know what it's like to have my anxiety affect other people. I mean, I met my wife like a month before I started, like, this all happened, and she's taken care of me the entire time, and paid all the bills, supported me. And I don't know how a person can do that. I'm basically, like, most of the time just a vegetable, and it really takes a toll on you, like, just feeling like you're not contributing. And obviously that's not the same exact feeling you're feeling, because you have 3 jobs, but just having your anxiety affect other people. And I do think it can be a motivator, because when I ended up kind of beating my anxiety, it was after my wife had, sort of, I don't know if got less patient with me about it, that it started to get to her, and it really pushed me to, like, try to go outside and face my fears. And I do think facing your fears, like, the ultimate cure. But like you said, when you talk to people who are not understanding, and they're like, just go face your fear, or they put you in a situation that you're not ready for. I think if you face your fear when it's someone else pushing you to do it, it can backfire on you and send you further down in your anxiety hole. But when you do it voluntarily, like when you have tools that you can use and you're like, okay, I'm going to try this, that is absolutely how you cure your anxiety. Being able to face your fear on your own. And sorry, I went off for a little there, but I definitely know how that feels to affect your people with your anxiety.
So with your experience, it's just like a quick question. When you do get out and you are in the car, do you look out the window, like, at all? Do you, like, just take deep breaths? Do you try any tools at all?
So the first thing I do when I get into a car is I put on my headphones, but I don't turn anything on. I have a motivational video that I have ready to play, and I will try to sit up straight and look out the window. But if I start to feel anxious, then I'll so I'm always in the back seat. I'm never in the front seat. It's too scary. But if I start to feel anxious, I'll lay down. And if that doesn't help, then I'll start to play a game on my phone. And if that doesn't help, then I'll play that motivational video, and I'll pray to, well, I'm not really religious, but I'll just hope for the best. And yeah, if it gets past that point, then I start, like, frantically flinging my arms, like, I can't breathe, pull over. And usually if it comes to that where I have to pull over, as soon as I get out of the car and I'm smoking a cigarette, I'm usually pretty good. But all of that occurs within a 5-minute trips to my mom's house, because my mom doesn't live that far, and that's the only place that I really go. Usually, like, sometimes we'll go to a grocery store, and I don't know if you do, but I still wear a mask just because I'm afraid of everything. I'm usually pretty good once I'm somewhere, but the car, like, if I can get away, I'm good. Like, I don't know, I feel like I have 2 safe bases, my mom's house and my house.
Okay. I get it. It's so hard. So I actually used to really, like I said in the beginning, I like to travel. I like that country road thing. and I liked feeling the fresh air and just not being around people and enjoying that drive. Um, but for these weird reasons, um, I haven't gone on a trip since I want to say the end of the year last year, or right before it got cold last year. And we were supposed to take this trip on Tuesday, and it's about 4 hours. We used to go further. I used to go 6 hours, 7 hours, or I would just pick random places and go with my kids, and we would just go to different areas in like Illinois or in Wisconsin. We went to Wisconsin. That was like a 6, 7 hour drive. Um, and I always did so good, and I felt better when I was away from like the city. Um, but for some reason, getting ready for this trip, the day before I was in the group and I was just like, I can't do this trip. I can't do it. Like, I'm so scared to go. I don't even want to go. I'm not going to make it. Like, what if I like pass out? What if I have anxiety while I'm driving? What if I get into a car accident and I'm in the middle of nowhere? What if like nobody can get to me? You know, what if like just all these what ifs? And I kind of checked myself after like the trip had gotten canceled. Um, I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, you were literally freaking out. Like, your body really got heavy. You literally let your temperature go up because it got really hot. And I was really, like, shaky. And I just felt so stiff, like a turtle, you know, when they stick their head in the shell. And I was like, these are things that you love doing. Like, as soon as you get out of the city limits, like, you're going to be okay. So I actually set up a time. Um, by the end of June, I will travel. And it's going to be a challenge for myself, but I am going.
That's good.
I know I'm talking big shit now. Like, yeah, I'm going to. I'm going to. And when the time comes, I'm going to be like, oh my God, I'm so scared. But I have to.
Yeah.
Because if I don't challenge myself and I don't do this for myself, I'm just gonna let this take over me. And I really am like really sympathetic, and I feel like I'm sitting here like, wow, is there ways like maybe we can get him to go a little further, or like sit in the car maybe like outside of your house for a little while and just play with the radio or something, you know, just to get comfortable with the car. You know, I'm sitting here like, is there a way to help him kind of like challenge himself? You know, because it's like I know when I'm feeling in the right place like I am right now at this moment, I should say, I know that there's ways and there's coping mechanisms, but it's just a matter of getting through them at that time of the anxiety.
Right.
And that's where I feel like the challenges have to come in for myself as well. So it is. It's just, it's so tricky with anxiety because it can be at any time, any moment. You know, you can feel okay like I do right now. I'm like, yeah, I got this. Like, let's go. You know, and then it's like, but when the time comes, I know it's something's gonna play on my mind. You know.
Yeah, like right now, I'm fine as well. My wife's asleep in the other room, and I know if I freak out, I can just go run to her, and it's I can usually plan ahead because I definitely know all of my triggers.
Okay.
Alone, the car, and heat. And I know you mentioned earlier. I think you mentioned drinking. We were talking about drinking water, drinking soda, and like the amount of Reese's I consume. I really need to work on that. There's a lot of things that I feel like I know all the right answers, my coping skills, and to eat better and to challenge myself. I feel like knowing is half the battle. It's like I feel like there's a lazy department to me, but there's also like I don't know. I don't even want to deal with my fear. The only thing that I mean, it does get to a point where I'm miserable because, you know, I feel like I don't have a purpose or I feel worthless. But I think the biggest motivator for me is just I I'm not helping my wife, and when she has a bad day at work and she has to go in anyways and I'm just not doing anything, it it definitely pushes me to attempt to challenge myself. Like I said last year, I ended up beating my anxiety, and we went on a trip, even though, cars are the worst thing for me. We went out to the forest, and it was so beautiful and peaceful, and I wish I could do things like that. Like my wife's family lives in Nebraska, and they're always like, "Oh, come down for Thanksgiving," and in an airplane. You think a car's bad, an airplane is,
Right.
oh my God, like, so that's not possible, but I want it to be. I want that to be possible. I want to, have kids and make enough money to live in a house and, have a picket fence and all that awesome stuff. And, be an example for my kids. And, sometimes I feel like a pathetic little worm, and everybody's life would be better without me. But at the same time, like, I know my wife loves me. I don't know why. I'm not that great, but I know she does. And I know my mom loves me, and I know that they would be devastated if I wasn't here. So instead of me just fading away, it really, there are moments where I will be brave and I'll start crying. Like, if I have a moment of bravery and I face my fear successfully, I'll start crying, because most of the time I feel like it's an impossible wall that I will never be able to face. And, I actually remember a time where I went bike riding, and, I went a little further than I normally would, and I started to get scared, and there was a car coming, and I had to slam on my brakes, and I actually ended up hitting my thigh on one of the, I don't know, parts on my bike, and it cut my thigh up. There was like a pretty big gash, and it hurt a lot, and I was happy. I was so happy, because guess what I wasn't thinking about? I wasn't thinking about panicking or my
Right.
breathing or my head. My leg hurt. I'm not suggesting anybody hurt themselves, but yeah, it just,
But in that moment,
yeah,
it was it, and it's just, like you said, you had beat it before and you were able to go on a trip. And I know sometimes to some people it sounds really harsh. And I'm not trying to be harsh, because again, like, I would never discredit anybody's anxiety, how they have it, how it affects them or how they feel, you know. But it's like, anxiety isn't gonna kill us.
right,
We're gonna kill ourselves. Like, and that's not that we're gonna go out and do that, because that's not what we're gonna do at all. It's because that's just an easy way out. It's the fact that we're doing it to ourselves, and we're allowing ourselves to do it. And I think once we start convincing ourselves that that's what it is, it helps, going back to like you and being able to overcome your anxiety at one point. If you've done it once, you could do it again. So just because like you're going through what you're going through right now, like, okay, it's a temporary thing, and eventually, like, this too shall pass. But it's just a matter of time and being patient with yourself, because I notice we blame ourselves a lot for a lot of things, and that guilt kicks in, and then the anxiety or the panic will kick in, and that makes it 10 times worse. It's a very,
it's a vicious cycle, because your anxiety
yes,
keeps you from doing shit, which makes you depressed, and you blame yourself, and it just, the negative spirals downward. But if you step away from that, if you find a way to distract yourself, hopefully not by hurting yourself, but just
right,
anything, you can have clarity and see things for how they are, and calm down. Like, there's a lot of moments where I'm just, at home by myself, just completely miserable. But the other night I was sitting on the couch, and I was miserable all day, and I looked over at my wife, and I'm just almost went straight to tears. Just how lucky am I? And God, I really need to start really trying. And yeah, I mean,
It's a matter of like being fair.
yeah,
It's like she's fair with you. Now try something to be fair with her. Even if you guys sit in the car and listen to music, if the car is your trigger, I don't know like how Arizona is because I know it's like a lot of desert. Um, but even if like you were to sit in the car or sit outside in the car somewhere and just eat a sandwich, or just talk about something together, have like that communication, you know, and maybe even that would be like something to do for her or goal for her, to accomplish even for yourself.
I don't think it's like exactly the car. Like if I went and sat out in the car, I'd be fine because I could get out that second. I
Okay.
think it's being far enough away where I know it's gonna take some time. Like if we get to a red light that's like maybe hard to pull over, any amount of barriers in my way to get to what I consider safe is like I'll
Ah,
even panic in the shower sometimes when I'm alone because I'll have to get out, dry my hands, and then get to my phone. And can I do all of that before I pass out? And then
I get
also people have to, find their way to get to me. Um, Barriers of saving me from passing out when I've actually never passed out before. I just have this overwhelming fear of I'm gonna die, and yeah.
I get it. It's hard.
And here I am talking to someone who's actually been through all of my worst fears and come out the other side. So
Like, you know what? It's crazy because when I passed out, like, yeah, I still think like, oh my God, am I gonna pass out? Um, is it gonna happen? But it's like, okay, you went through that. For some reason, I can overcome that. That's not really like a big thing for me, which is I know it sounds weird and it's crazy because it's like, well, what do you mean? Like you passed out. And it was like, yeah, I did pass out, but at the same time I came out of it and I was like, what the hell is going on? But, I kind of acted like nothing at the time. And yeah, again, it is like fearful, like, oh, okay, is it going to happen again? But it's like, okay, you know what? I just tell myself, like, it did happen and you were okay. And I did it to myself because I wasn't controlling my breathing. And as long as I just tell myself, like, as long as you could control your breathing and stay controlling your breathing, you're not going to pass out.
that's weird for me because when I'm focused on my breathing, that's when I usually do freak out. Like if I remember to breathe. Um,
Or if you feel like you're not breathing the right way.
right, yeah. I'd
Yeah.
much prefer to just think about something else and let my body do it for me because when I'm thinking about it, it's like, oh shit, am I even doing it right?
Yeah, see, and I'm more like, okay, like take a deep breath. And then of course, if you do distract yourself and you do um sit there and not focus on it, it does help as well. Again, like for everybody it's different.
Right.
Like I can talk to myself and tell myself like, okay, just breathe. And then I'll start like folding laundry or I'll move around. And moving around does help me a lot. Like I'll be like, oh, I forgot I have, dishes I have to wash, or oh, let me sweep the stairs really quick, or even if I did it twice already, like so what? I'm just gonna do it again, just to keep moving. And at work, it's the same thing. Like if I'm sitting there and there's absolutely nothing to do, I'll start overthinking. So I do go to games on my phone or TikTok, or I'll start like looking up herbs and like, oh, I can mix these herbs together and how can I soak them for a couple days or extract them, or what oils can I mix with them and make like a cleansing bath, and like I'll step into like my spirituality stuff. And that's mainly what I've been focusing on a lot too, is like I used to do all the spiritual stuff for myself and for other people, and it helped so many people, and I felt so good doing that. So why am I sitting here letting this control me when I could be doing this stuff and not just helping myself but others as well?
Yeah, I know helping other people helps me because not only am I not thinking about my own problems, but like making someone else feel better um, makes me feel not worthless and makes me feel
Hmm.
good. I think like I think it's impossible to not judge people. Like obviously you can just see what people look like and you have immediate thoughts or whatever, but um, I know people have different degrees, like you said, for anxiety and even anger. Like if I dropped a pencil, there's someone out there that might like enrage them for some reason, and you know, I it takes a lot for me to get angry. Um, but at the same time, like I'm afraid of cars. I have a random irrational fear, and a lot of people have random irrational fears, and I try my best not to judge anything anymore because I know what it's like to, I don't want to say not think correctly, but like, not think
To be in that
correctly.
state of mind. Right.
Yeah.
The state of mind, of course. Yeah, I definitely try to be understanding. Sometimes I do get a little frustrated because I get frustrated with myself, and it's like, come on, like we can do this. But that's where I have to like step back and be like, it's patience and time. You have to have patience and time, and not just within other people, but within yourself. So again, I know not everybody's going to get over it. Not everybody's going to like understand it. Um, and I've learned to not expect everybody to, and just kind of, I guess, deal with it on my own. Luckily, I have these groups now where it's like we all kind of feel the same symptoms. We all kind of go through the same thing. There's a lot of similarities, or, you learn something new about somebody else and you're like, well, hey, that one little thing that I was freaking out about isn't as bad because this person's feeling this, or they have this going on. And I know it's not always good to compare, but sometimes that does help as well. Not judge, but just compare to yourself. Hey, you know what? Like, you're freaking out because your sinuses were bothering you, but this person, really does have bad test results with their heart, and that's why they're having their anxiety, or, something else going on, their husband or their child, or, people with young kids. Like, my kids are older now. And when they were younger, I was good. I was fine. But now that they're older, I look at some little kids and I'm like, oh my God, I wouldn't be able to do that. Like, I don't know if I can ever, handle that again. And I love kids as long as they're not mine. you know, like the little ones, they're more active. And I'm like, oh my God, like, you know, kids like to run around and bounce balls and jump around. And I'm like, oh my God, like the ball bouncing, my head is pounding. It's like, it, I don't take it out on them, and I stay quiet and I get through it. But I notice like your patience can be tested, and even something that simple can trigger you.
Right. I don't have any patience, so like that's probably a part of my anxiety too. Is like I want to be at my like in the car. I want to be at my safe place right now. Why am I all the amount of time that's keeping me from my feeling safe just drives me crazy. I try a lot to not pay attention to where I am when I'm in the car. Um, just to throw this out there, potentially if you were talking to someone who um, is new to this, like, because up until 20, I had never experienced panic ever, or, anxiety ever. And I had no idea what to do. If you were talking to someone like that, who they're going through this for the first time and, they're convinced they're dying, they also know it's probably anxiety. Is there anything you would tell them, either hints or just advice, something like that?
Work on overcoming it now.
Yeah,
Figure out
before
the
it gets too
triggers.
bad.
Right. Um my again, like, I know this sounds harsh to some people and even to myself, but this is me also being hard on myself as well. Um, and it's not being judgmental to anybody, but don't let it become you. You know, don't let it get as far as it has for either like you with yourself and like me within myself. You know, all these years and the ups and downs, and deal with it at that moment and figure it out, whether it be with somebody, whether it be with medication, whether it be with a stranger, or even if I'm able to help them. Um or them finding somebody that can help them. I do believe in like therapy. I'm not, like I said, I'm not a fan of the medication, but if it does come to a point of somebody needing it, then hey, try it. If nothing else is working and that's what the next step is for you, then you need to try it, you know? Um, but it would be to fight the hardest to deal with it in the beginning rather than letting it take over you long term.
I agree completely. I think that the more you avoid it, the bigger it gets, and the more you face it, the smaller it can get. And I think that's
Yes.
perfect advice. I'm not sure if you had anything to add. I know me and you could probably talk for 5 more hours, but if there's anything like, you know, super on your mind, or maybe something you written down that you definitely wanted to get through or get to. I'm not sure if you have anything.
No, my biggest thing would be is coping mechanisms. Ice, like I said, that's a big thing for me. I do know like the 5 4 3 2 1 thing. Sometimes that does help, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, it never helped me.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many things. They give you so many coping mechanisms. I do suggest trying them just to see if it does work for you. But if it doesn't, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up for it. But my biggest thing is don't let it become you, and just know like we're not gonna die from it. It's just something that we're going through for the time being, and be patient with yourself.
I just want to say the amount that you've experienced, the amount of miracles you've experienced with your son going through cancer, your dog saving you, you going through anxiety but pushing through, having 3 jobs, having these support people around you setting up, your boss being, it's just it's really inspiring to me, because you have already faced all of my worst fears that I think about all the time. And it just shows me that even if my worst fears come to pass or actually happen, that people can get through it. And you've definitely given me confidence within this conversation, and I definitely appreciate you, and I look forward to hopefully doing this with you again. I do want to mention that I'm going to ask Alyssa to send me those links for those 2 videos she mentioned that help her out. I think it was what were they again?
It was the chant.
The chant.
It was yeah.
And then maybe one of those songs. Those I think you mentioned with big bass.
Yeah. Well, it's living on a prayer.
There you go.
I mean, I love that song. I listen to it a lot. So I feel like I literally have lived on a prayer and I've gotten through. So that's one of them. And then the chant I will send to you through Facebook.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So definitely. And I'm not hard to find if I can help somebody else. And even you, like, thank you as well for taking your time with me and being patient, listening to my long stories.
No,
but
I loved it.
Even going through what I've gone through and overcoming it, look at me, like I still have the anxiety, and I'm still going to keep pushing through it. And if I can help somebody else, I definitely will.
I think that's awesome. And I'll have those 2 videos in the description of this, so they can just click right on it. And I know Alyssa is a person that likes to help people, and if you're listening to this right now and you want to talk to her, I'll definitely message me, and I'll try to connect you too if she's interested, because I'm sure she would love to talk to you and potentially help you out. And if that's all you have, then that's all for me, Alyssa.
All right, thank you so much. Have a good one. Good luck, everybody.
All right, I'll see you guys later.
Bye bye.